So let's watch this video while you're getting seated, getting more food, making yourselves comfortable, and here we go.
Is that something you recommend to all CEOs?
I think it's great to connect with your employees and why they want to be connected with.
Your favorite off-duty activity is?
Golf.
Your favorite workday distraction is?
Walking around the office, just sort of chatting to people.
The one trait you look for in leaders in your company?
I look for courage.
What do you miss most about Australia?
I miss my football and my cricket. That's what I miss the most.
Doritos Locos Taco or Queso Fry?
Doritos Locos Taco.
Would you rather go golfing with Jason Day or flying with Harrison Ford?
Oh, that's a toughie. Golfing with Jason Day.
Your favorite personal possession is?
Wow, that's a good question. I don't know. Can I my favorite personal possession? I know. A photograph of my grandmother.
What's your secret vice?
M&M's.
You introduced the world to the term fourth meal. Any regrets?
No, none whatsoever.
Who's the person you most admire and why?
Besides my dad, Winston Churchill. I think he was incredibly courageous, during the Second World War.
Describe your leadership style in 5 words or less.
Oh, authentic, transparent, genuine, real, vulnerable.
The one thing Americans should consume less of is?
Television.
What advice would you give young people entering the workforce today?
Take the jobs that no one else wants to do. Hi, I'm Greg Creed. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Yum Brands.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Wanda Williams and I work at Yum Brands. I'm the head of global franchising. So I want to introduce our speaker today. I have a few funny stories about him. I want to tell you everything that I think is wonderful about him and then make sure you give him a hard time. So it's funny, in 2015 is when I was hired and I met a gentleman named Artie Stars who at that point was the CFO of Pizza Hut US. And then David Gibbs was the CEO of Pizza Hut. And they said, look, we're having a really hard time, with our franchise system. We really need to transform at least a third of it. We need to sell 2,200 stores. That was the time of the China spin. We're not really sure how to do it. And you obviously lead big sales organizations, so you know how to transform businesses. We'd love for you to come talk to us to see if you possibly could be interested in working with us. And I was like, no, I have a job, but I don't mind talking to everybody. So I go meet with them in Dallas, because that's where Pizza Hut's headquartered. And then I never heard from them. So I was like, it's over. Like, they weren't interested. Then about 8 months later, I got a call from Artie, and he said, guess what? Greg Creed said, don't come out of this door until white smoke is coming out of the door, and that means you have a great idea. So their great idea was we're going to go get Wanda Williams, and she is going to set up this sales division to help us sell these 2,200 stores. So they said, look, can you come to Louisville? We'd love for you to come meet a few folks. And so they were going to be all people from the HR team. So it was Ann Byerland, she was the outgoing CPO, Chief People Officer. Tracy Skeen, she was the incoming Chief People Officer, and then a few other HR contacts. So I fly to Louisville, I'm super excited. I meet Ann, she was lovely, we had a great conversation. Well, I was a little bit late to the meeting with Tracy, and we actually had it via Teams, which is kind of wild for 2015, because now we do everything on Teams, but back then you didn't. Yeah. So she was sitting on the screen the whole time. I get there, she wasn't really happy I was late, and I was like, oh, this company's so great. And so she really grills me for an hour and 15 minutes, and I thought, this isn't going well. So I said, hey, can I just go to the restroom so I could just take a break? Coming out of the restroom, and they're like, Greg Creed's ready. I'm like, who's Greg Creed? He's not on my list. And they're like, he's the CEO of Yum. So I walk in, he goes, who are you? You must be really important. They just yanked me from my burrito. So that was the first time I met Greg. He was completely the most welcoming and warm and lovely and most interesting person I'd ever met. We had an hour meeting. We never once talked about the job, not once. We talked about California, we talked about cars, we talked about golf. I don't play, but he does. He loved it. And I remember leaving, and he said, well, I look forward to seeing you in Dallas. So I was like, oh, no, I didn't get the job. There's other people they're going to interview. He goes, no, it's you. And I just kind of laughed because he was funny the whole time. So I was like, this must be another joke. But sure enough, I did get the job. But what I'd like to tell you about this gentleman is he's got such an ease of how he works with folks, how he does business. He always makes sure that people feel comfortable. Like he said, you would see him in the cafeteria. He'd walk around and talk to everybody. He would engage everybody. It's really important when you're that big of a leader to be easy to approach, easy to work with. So that's one of the things I love about him. The second thing I love about him is he does not shut down any sort of big thinking that's outside the box. The bigger idea, the better for him. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but he encourages it, and he's always encouraged that in me. And then the third thing, which he said in the video, which he says to me all the time, is, Wanda, quit looking for your next role. Look for the job nobody else will take. And I've had 3 of them at Yum, by the way. And I really asked him this about a year ago, and he said the same thing. He's like, every job you've had was a job that didn't exist and was a problem they needed to solve, and no one raised their hand but you. He said, keep raising your hand. So I think that's just something that, is really important. So make sure you dig into that and ask him why he thinks that. He worked in various businesses prior to Yum, but he worked at Yum for over 25 years. And he had several jobs. Now, they all had chief in front of him, okay? So that's a big deal, right? He was the president and chief concept officer at Taco Bell. He can walk you through everything about the Fourth Mill and Live Moss, because when he got to that brand, they were in a really challenged state, and he brought them to where they are today. He was the CEO of Taco Bell. He did a lot of wonderful things as CEO. One of the things I'm most proud of is how he championed women and how he made sure he searched for the underdogs in the business who worked hard and promoted every last one of them. So that's a passion of his. Then he became the CEO of Yum Brands. This is when I met him. He also served on the board of Yum Brands. And then when he left, he has been on various other boards, the board of Whirlpool, Aramark, Delta Airlines, where he chairs the finance committee, which is funny because he's a marketer.
Oh my gosh.
And he also is on the board of Girls Inc. And then he founded an unconventional marketing company called Unco, which he'll tell you more about. So he's just wildly fascinating. He's very real. Everything he says to you will be in digestible, really easy to understand bites, which I think is powerful. Sometimes you can say things in the plainest language and can be more powerful than complex words. So it is my absolute pleasure to introduce today's guest. First, I'll introduce our moderator, who is Dr. Kathy Gosser, none other than my partner in crime. We work with her. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
We're really proud. Yum has collaborated with the University of Louisville to create the Yum Center for Global Franchise Excellence, which many of you know about, and we love everything that Kathy does. We also love that she's a Yum alum. So she'll be your wonderful moderator today, and then she will be interviewing none other than Greg Creed. So give him a big round of applause.
Thank you, Wanda. So before I get started, though, I would like to point out our dean is here. So Dr. Jeff Kwan is the dean of the College of Business. We're thrilled to have his support. All right, so we're going to get started. First of all, we're going to have you all have a little fun with this. So I know my students have a phone, right? So you can pull your phone out, and we're going to find out how well you know Greg, if you listened or if you looked anything up. So we have about 5 questions, and you can join, but first I'd like you to join. You can either hit the QR code, or you can go to ahaslides.com/gcreed. He has his own URL. You got to do the marketing.
I wouldn't know how to do that, but I have one.
So you should all get signed up. Put your name in there. That's going to be important for the spinning later.
Oh.
And now... So is everybody ready? So there are going to be 5 questions. So let me tell you what you'll do. You'll see it on your phone. There'll be a countdown. I think it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then you have 15 seconds to answer. Just like other games, speed is the key. So the person who's the fastest will get the most points, just like the Kahoot we play in class. And we do have some prizes at each one. The top person will get a little prize.
Whoa.
So you ready? Yeah? All right, Andy, now let's take a look at it. Are they starting? You guys in? Okay, so what country was Greg born in? To the
The song's
music?
giving it away. They should be 100% on this question.
Let's see what they've done. Time's up. Go ahead and click. There we go. All right, 57 if you're in. Good job.
New Zealand. God.
So let's see who's the fastest. Michael Short. Awesome.
Yes.
Come on down. Woohoo. Let's go to the next. And you know, while he's running down, let's hit the next, please. And thank you. Now we have 93 players.
Well, this is technology.
There you go. You're good. Which brand did Greg turn around? If they'd listened. Buff City Soap.
Sorry?
Buff City Soap.
Exactly.
Time's up. All right. Most of you got that it was Taco Bell. So, Annie, if you'll hit that to the side, we'll see who is the top winner. Michael Short.
No.
Is that the same one?
No.
No,
Here you go.
Lindsay Bartley. Where is Lindsay? Come on down. All right. Excellent. Fantastic. So we will be talking about Taco Bell a lot. That is true. We've got 3 more of these. They know you pretty well.
I know.
Oh, Noah's here, one of my students. All right. Greg once said Taco Bell is the voice of rebellion, and rebels don't eat salads, sandwiches, or breakfast. True or false? What's that answer, Greg?
True.
Okay, that had to be true.
Yeah.
That had to be a give me. He did say that. Isn't that so fun? And at the top we have Thomas, whoever that is. Come on down and grab your prize. Woohoo!
There's Thomas.
All right, while he's coming down, we can keep moving. 2 more, Greg. Do you know these answers, by the way?
I know.
You do?
Ah.
Greg's, what does RED stand for? R-E-D. Is it really engaging dirt? I made that up. I should have been a marketing.
That was good, though. That was good. I like that.
All right, let's see who got it. Yes, relevant ease and distinctiveness. And we will be talking about that as well. So, Liz is at the top. Come on down, Liz. And one more. One more for a prize. Question 5, you anxious?
Yep.
What does Greg admire most in a leader?
Yes.
This one's hard. Smart, heart, or courage? We're going to talk about this too.
We are.
I'm teeing them all up for you.
I know, this is awesome.
Look at all your likes. You're getting loves, likes.
Oh, wow.
That's pretty good.
That's awesome.
It is courage.
Congratulations.
And we will definitely talk about that.
And the
So
winner.
at the top, we have Brian Bianco. Woohoo! All right, Brian. Come on down. Excellent. And I have one last interactive question. If you'll click that. If you will do, I think I gave you a chance to do 3 words. 1, 2, or 3 words of why you're here. Why you actually came to listen to Greg today.
Free food.
You know, that helps. Free food and extra credit seem to help a lot.
I know.
Learn, I love that. Here they come.
Extra
Experience, to have fun, to learn.
Kathy
Australia,
Gosser.
Australia Met got some.
Yeah.
So fun.
I'm telling you, food is winning.
Food is big. Yes, yes, excellent, Greg. All right, these are the reasons you all are here, and I think that we are going to hit every one of those. So with that, Greg, why don't we have a little bit more fun with you? Let's turn it to
Why
you.
not? Why not?
So the next slide, Andy, if you'll go to that, we have a spinner. Go ahead and hit the spin. Whatever it lands on, Greg has to tell us what his favorite is. Of these.
Oh my goodness.
Here we go.
Is this preordained?
Your favorite role at Yum Brands.
CEO of Taco Bell.
I bet that was fun.
That was
I
awesome.
can see that.
That was a lot of fun.
Spin that again. Uh-oh. Go back and just hit the spin again. Thank you. So by the way, it wasn't when he was my boss, when he was Chief Operating Officer of Yum Brands. You noticed that wasn't his favorite.
But there's a story behind that, which we'll tell.
Your book, and not yours.
Yes, I know. No, there's a book called "It's Your Ship" by a guy called Mike Abrashoff, who went to Annapolis and was given the worst ship in the Pacific Fleet to command, and in 22 months turned it into the best ship in the U.S. fleet. And it's full of amazingly practical advice, a lot of which I did use at Yum and Taco Bell. So that's my favorite book.
Yeah, you brought him in a couple times.
I did, yeah.
He was great. He was great.
Awesome.
Let's do one more, and then we'll go to our questions. Andy, now let's hit it. Does this make you nervous?
Yeah. Anything could come up.
Anything could come up. That's true. Oh, just your favorite food overall.
Well, you know, that's like having
Careful.
3 children and choosing your favorite child. So I'm going to answer a pan Hawaiian, a zinger sandwich, and a crunch wrap at Taco Bell.
Got them all. Got them all. Well done.
Yes,
Well done. I appreciate that. So why don't we go on to our questions? We can probably cut the music. Thanks, Andy, now. And we'll start asking some questions. So there are really 2 main topics we want to explore with you, Greg, marketing and franchising.
Right.
And I know I have some franchise students in here, we have marketing students in here, and people who are interested in both. So let's start with franchising. So you were the CEO of Yum Brands, and that is the largest franchisor in the world.
Correct.
With Taco Bell being the biggest U.S. brand, KFC being the biggest global brand. And so first, tell our audience a little bit about Yum Brands, if you don't mind.
Sure. So what I love about Yum is it was started by, if you think about it, 3 people. So Colonel Sanders, Glenn Bell, who I never met the Colonel, but I did get to meet Glenn Bell. And then the Carney brothers, who started Pizza Hut in Wichita, Kansas. And Glenn started Taco Bell in Downey, California. I know Glenn's story the best because I got to know him. And this is a gentleman who fought in World War II, who came back, was discharged from the Navy. He served in the Navy. He was given $1,000 on discharge. He started a burger chain. That didn't work. He started a taco chain with some friends. That didn't work. And then he created Taco Bell. And from Glenn Bell with $1,000, coming out of the Marines, and he fought in like the Battle of Coral Sea. This was major stuff. And and today I think Taco Bell will do $15 billion in sales. So I just think it's fantastic that it is sort of like the great American dream, which is the Carney brothers weren't rich. The Colonel didn't start till 65 or something. Glenn started coming out of the Navy. And so what I love is that those 4 gentlemen created a business today that I think does like $55 billion in sales, 140 countries, 53,000 restaurants, and employs 1.5 million people around the world. So it has a major impact. And so, but it's, to me, it's not the size that matters. What I love is, what I really loved most of when I was at Yum was that if you think, I'd go to a meeting anywhere in the world, and in that room would be men, women, straight people, gay people, lesbians, Muslims, Jews, Christians, Hindus, whatever it happened to be, and we were a family. And it always used to amaze me. Why can't the world get on like the people at Yum? Like, why can we not just get on and your sex, gender, race, religion, skin, none of that mattered. I never felt, and okay, I'm a white guy, but I never felt that it mattered. What mattered was your ability, your character, your values, and it sort of, I love that we could demonstrate to the world that all of this differences can coexist and be hugely successful. And I think that was the thing I was always most proud of.
As you should be. And I can attest that working there all those years.
Yeah.
So I can definitely say that. So you were the CEO who really led the franchising effort. So
Yep.
to level set, the brands used to be about 40% company owned,
Correct.
60% franchise. And you had a different philosophy.
I did.
And you turned that around. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, well, it was interesting because when I took over from David Novak, who founded Yum and who was an amazing CEO, and but it was interesting at the time. Most of our assets of the company were in China, and then they were in other parts of the world, like interesting now, Russia, China, and I've always fundamentally believed that as an organization, you've got to be honest with what you're good at, and also honest with what you're not great at. And I thought as an organization, we were great at marketing. I thought we were great at development. I thought we were great at product development. I thought we were great at training, leadership, but I didn't think we were the world's greatest operators. And so my belief was, well, if we're good at these things and we're not good at this thing, let's not pretend we're good at it. Let's put our restaurants in the hands of our franchisees, who are ultimately about running great restaurants. And so you're right, we were, when I retired, we had only owned 2% of the restaurants. 98% were franchised. And we obviously spun off the China business, which was really interesting. Spinning off a China business, when we spun it off, it was worth about $15 or $16 billion. And it was interesting because at the time, a lot of people thought I'd lost everyone thinks I've lost my mind. But China had made Yum so much money for so long. It was like the goose that laid the golden egg. And I remember a lot of people saying to me, I don't really get this because this is the goose that laid the golden egg. Why on earth are we selling the golden egg, right? And my belief was we'd become over-dependent on the golden egg, and the rest of us, the right word is complacent. Because I'm running Taco Bell, and if we missed the plant, Scott would remember this, if you missed by 5 million, it didn't matter because China made 70 million more, right? And so I believe we had become complacent, and that the best thing to do was sell China, which is like burning the bridge, and then all that was left was to go forward. And so those were the two reasons. One was to put the restaurants in the hands of great operators, and the second one was to basically jolt us out of what I felt was our complacency. So that's the two reasons we set about, the franchising. And I also love franchising. I mean, I just think it almost is the quintessential American dream, right? Because you can come from anywhere with any skills, with any background. If you become a franchisee, you can be incredibly successful. You can build a family, wealth, and dynasty that, may not be easy to do for everybody given their sort of upbringing and circumstances.
That's true. And when we were back then, when we were at Yum and you started franchising, we thought your ulterior motive was to cut heads.
Yes.
So
oh no, it was. I remember, I think G&A at the time was 1.1 billion, and everyone's like, oh, Greg's going to cut it to 800 million, but most of the G&A went with the restaurants. It wasn't that we cut it. It's just that instead of it being on our balance sheet, it was on the balance sheet of the franchisees. So
that's such a great perspective, is do what you're best at, right?
Yeah.
And marketing was clearly what we were best
yeah,
at.
but I think it wasn't just, yes, we were sort of known as a marketing machine, but I would argue we were great at development, as in restaurant development. We were great at food innovation, and we were great at leadership training and development. As in developing, because if you think about the number of leaders that are CEOs today that learnt their craft at Yum and are now running other businesses. So I think we were also a great place to learn to be a great leader.
Wow, and to let you all know, Greg, actually, we had something called Yum University, and Greg always spoke there. He would do like a day-long class, Smart Heart and Courage, and that was really important.
Yeah.
That made a huge difference. Let's talk about franchisees.
Sure.
What's the key to working well with them?
I think it's just really being transparent, being honest, and just putting an awful lot of time into building the relationship. If it's transactional, it will be a disaster. So in my mind, it really is about just spending an inordinate amount of time building relationships. It's a bit like an insurance policy, right? If you think about an insurance policy, you pay every year, you pay, and then you actually hope you never have to draw on it, right? And every year when you don't draw on it, you sort of get angry, but you still pay, right? So to me, this was about investing time and energy in building a really transparent, honest relationship with our franchise partners. Sometimes they didn't like hearing what the transparent, honest thing was, but you had to deliver it because it was important to deliver. And I've always said leadership isn't about making people happy. One of my quotes is, I'll get it wrong because it's like, I think when I was at Taco Bell, I said, I'm not here to make you happy. I'm here to do what's right. If I do what's right, I'll make you happy. And I think often leaders think their job is to please everybody. No, your job is to do the right thing. That's your job. But I think if you do the right thing and you do it in the right way with culture and everything else, ultimately you can make everyone happy because you can also be incredibly successful. And I think that, so it's the approach of, doing it the right versus trying to make people happy.
Oh, I definitely hear that. My students would attest, we talk about relationships, and I think they think I overdo it. And so here is one of the most successful people in the world saying that we don't. So I'm also having my students unpack the franchise disclosure document.
Oh, yeah.
That is 23 items, and they've just turned in their phase 2. It's a lot of work. How many of those have you read, Mr. Creed?
None.
Can you believe that?
I have never read a franchise development agreement document in my life. I've never read a franchise contract in my life. And I actually blurted this out on a podcast with Kathy. And Scott Catlett, who's the general counsel, goes, can you please not say that publicly? Because,
So I had him do it again.
because really as the CEO of a public company with 50,000 restaurants and 3,000, it might be good that people think you actually read these documents. But the reason I didn't read the documents is, if I have to pull the document out, we're in trouble. Okay, and I never had to pull the document out. That doesn't mean we didn't have some ding-dong fights, and Scott, we used to have ding-dong fights with the franchisees, but it never got to the point where I had to bring a contract out and say, well, you have to do this and I have to do that, because once you've done that, you don't have a relationship. And so for me, it was about the relationship was far more important than what we'd ever written down. And I know sometimes I say break the rules, we agreed things that weren't in the agreement, but it was for the good of the franchisee, it was for the good of Yum, and it was the right thing to do. So we did it and didn't get constrained by, what someone had written, 20 years ago. And
you also had a team of attorneys around you that helped.
Yes, I was sort of blessed with attorneys. The funniest thing was, this thing on social media, when I was running Taco Bell, when I was the CMO of Taco Bell, was when social media sort of really started. And so I got on early, and my Twitter handle was Live Must Boss. And I made a few comments that Yum didn't like, and so the day I got to be the CEO of Yum, they took me off Twitter, Instagram. They even took me off LinkedIn, right? I was a social outcast. And then I finally convinced them to let me on LinkedIn, and I promised not to express individual opinions or opinions that would cause controversy. So so I was basically, desocialized for my I guess I would like to think honest, transparent thoughts, but the world doesn't always handle honest, transparent thoughts by CEOs.
At Taco Bell, they really do live Moss. They also live 2,500 miles away.
Yeah.
And so in Irvine, California, they tend to do things.
Oh yeah, we did the old, don't ask for permission, beg for forgiveness. I spent a lot of time begging. We put people in jeans. I said everyone could have 4 weeks vacation. I instituted 16 weeks maternity leave without asking Yum. And David would phone me up and go, just once could you ask me for permission before you do these things? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry, I meant to call you. I really did mean to call you. He's like, you no more meant to call me than pigs are going to fly across the sky. But he let me get away with it. And as I jokingly said to David, you made me the CEO of Yum, so, it worked out.
And I'll tell you why he got away with it. Billions and billions of sales will let you do just about anything.
I think it's an interesting comment. I always said to the team at Taco Bell, if we're going to be mavericks, you have to be successful mavericks. Mm-hmm. So it's okay to be maverick. It's okay to be, to be the maverick brand or the maverick leader. But boy, you take on a huge responsibility, which is Everyone will put up with your maverickism. Is that a word? I'm really bad at English. Whatever the correct word is, they'll put up with it so long as you deliver. But if you don't deliver, there's a lot of people that will want to chop you back down the side. So I always used to say, you know, if we're going to be mavericky, then we're going to have to be successful. And if we're successful, they'll let us continue to do it. So I still think it's the right thing to do, but it doesn't come without its risk.
That's exactly right. I can remember those stories.
Oh, yeah.
Whew, what would happen there?
Way too many.
Right now, would you franchise with Yum if that were on your...
I would love to. I mean, I won't because... Can you imagine me turning out a franchise meeting?
Oh, my word.
And all the brand presidents and David Gibbs are like, oh my God, he's come back to haunt us.
Can you imagine?
But in all honesty, the reason, and here's my reason why. My daughter, who actually works at PepsiCo, and she and her husband are actually looking, they're actually, I think I talked to you about Lauren doing the class, right? Are interested one day in becoming franchisees. And the other day she sent me a thing that of 500 franchise, so not just in fast food or QSR, for 500 franchisees that were assessed for the second year in a row, Taco Bell was voted the #1 franchise of 500 franchises. So my answer is yes, I would love to. I will never because that would not be right. But I think it's, and I've seen so many, I mean, in my 25 years, I've seen so many people. I remember Don Garib, who's a franchisee in Birmingham, Alabama. He started with one restaurant. When he retired, he had 250 Taco Bells, and he sold that business for, I think, about, it's got $400 or $500 million? Something like that, $400 or $500 million. So he's from Lebanon. He came from Lebanon. He bought his first Taco Bell, and when he retired about 35 years later, he had created a business worth $400 to $500 million. Now, how can you not be excited by that?
That's right. So what advice would you have for our students if they're interested in getting into franchising?
Well, I think, you know, my advice would be, it's actually the advice I gave my daughter, so I'll share with you the exact advice I gave my daughter. So my daughter's a marketer, she followed her dad. I said, you know what, if you're going to be a franchisee, you need to find a partner who's an operator. And it's funny, there's a guy who used to work at Pizza Hut, when, you know, and they're good friends. And she started speaking to him. I said, because, you know, ultimately, at the end of the day, as I said earlier, franchising is about operating. And my daughter is a great marketer. She was the senior brand manager on, you know, Doritos and Cheetos, and that's why I weigh so much, because I eat so many free chips. I looked much lighter back in that photograph, I'd like to say. So, but I said to her, I said, hey, darling, you know, you're not an operator. And you would be a great combination with someone who's a great operator, but I said, I don't think you should go and do this by yourself. I think you should find a partner who's an operator, because ultimately, that's what you want. You want, of all the things you want your franchisees to be, you want them to be great operators. So if you're in the room and you know, you have a particular functional skill, whether it's ops or marketing or finance or whatever, they're great skills. But if you're not an operator, I would find someone to partner who probably has some experience operating, and I think that will set you up for even more success. So find an operating partner, and I think that will be, you know, but by the way, if you do, there's another bit of advice, and particularly if they're friends, work out what happens if one day you're no longer friends. And work that out now. I saw too many franchisees who were partners for, you know, 10, 20 years, and then they had a falling out. They didn't have an agreement on how this was going to occur, and it became really just litigious and cantankerous, and it was really disappointing. And so I would say, if you're going to become a franchisee with a partner, then and it sort of sounds silly, but make sure you decide how it's going to, if you're going to exit or one of you is going to exit. Agree that up front. Don't agree it when one of you wants to, you know, move on.
Good advice. Very good advice. So I've also heard you say that the two most important things in a company are really not on the balance sheet.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
That's people and the brand.
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
Well, I think it's true. Right? So first of all, I don't know how I passed accounting in my business degree, but somehow I passed accounting. And
Same.
as I jokingly said, when I became when I chaired the finance committee everyone thought it was a joke, you know, like April Fool's joke, because I'm the marketer.
Did you really do that?
I am the chair of the finance committee
At Delta?
at Aramark.
At Aramark.
I chair the HR committee at Whirlpool, and I chair the finance committee at Aramark. That's true. I know.
Wow.
I know. See, no one believes it. Everyone thinks it's a joke. What was the question? What am I meant to be answering? The hell am I
You're
meant to be
talking
answering?
about people and brands.
Oh, yes.
Which are not on the P&L.
No, no. And so, if you think about an organization, and are there any accounting, because I'm now about to pick on the accountants in the room, sorry, but the accountants love to measure things, right? But here's another fundamental belief. Just because you can measure something doesn't mean it's important. All it means is you can measure it. But accountants, they love measuring things. So they think, well, because I can measure it, it must be important. But that's not true. And some of the most important things in life, you can't measure. So, you've been married how long?
32 years.
Okay, can you measure love?
No.
No. Does that mean love's not important?
No.
No.
That's a good point.
So, I think that just because there's two things. Just because you can measure it, it doesn't make it important. And sometimes the most important things in life are what you cannot measure. And so if you think about a balance sheet, the accountants have never worked out a way to actually put a value of the people, which is the culture, the people, the leader, everything. And no one's ever been able to create the value of a brand. But the Coca-Cola company isn't worth 40 billion. Its market cap, I don't know what it is, I just made that up. It could be 200 billion. But the brand, I guarantee you the brand, Coca-Cola, is almost, you couldn't put a price on it, right? Mm-hmm. And so when people bring you ideas and they go, we should buy this, or we should do this, or we should do that, and they show you the P&L and the balance sheet, I was like, well, that's awesome, but that's not, I need to look at two things. What are the quality of the people of the organization? What's the culture like at that organization? And how good are those brands? Mm-hmm. Now, it's okay, because sometimes the brands suck and you think you can fix them. That's okay, but they have value that don't get recognized. That doesn't mean they're not the most important things. And so in my mind, the two most important things in any organization are the people and the brands.
And you definitely drive that with culture.
Yeah.
So I know that culture was really important to you when you were at Yum Brands. You talk about smart, heart, and courage. Why don't you school our students about that?
Sure. So in 2006, David Novak asked me to be the Chief Operating Officer of Yum. Now, if everyone thinks I can't do accounting, everyone thought, well, if he can't, he certainly can't run a restaurant, right? So I had people, think David had smoking drugs that are probably now legal, but were illegal in those days, and had made this decision to make me the Chief Operating Officer. So I come to Louisville, and I'm like, what the hell, why am I the Chief Operating Officer? And honestly, for the first couple of months, I really struggled. It's probably the first time in my life I struggled. I didn't know what to do, because I was like, well, I can't tell the operators how to run restaurants because I don't know how to run them. And so how am I going to tell them to run them better, right? And so I sat down with David, and he could tell I was frustrated. And though, to be fair, I had started, Brian Goldstein was teaching me, we owned Long John's at the time. I got taught and passed shift lead for Taco Bell and Long John Silver. Because I thought if I'm going to be the Chief Operating Officer, I better well know how to run a restaurant. But more importantly, I was frustrated because I didn't know how to help. I think that was my fundamental problem was. And David said to me, I didn't put you in this job, to sort of run restaurants. I put you in this job to think about operations differently. And so he said, go away and think about how do the operators currently run their restaurants, and how would you run, not the actual making a taco and frying the chicken and stuff, how would you run them differently? And so I felt that what we had was a bit of a command and control, philosophy in operate. Now I can understand why, because it's safety issues and there's human safety issues. I understand all that. And so, but I thought what we weren't doing was sort of bringing other things to operations. And if you think about an experience that you have, even when something goes wrong, it can be rescued by great empathy and compassion and all that sort of stuff. And so that's sort of part A. Part B is, as a leader, you often get asked at conferences, you get in an elevator and someone says, what are the 3 things to be a great leader? And so I thought, I need an elevator answer. And so I came up with smart, heart, and courage. So I'll quickly explain it because I know we got other questions. So smart yes, is what you sort of think, IQ, but I think IQ is the least important characteristics that will define a leader's success. There's sort of like a level you have to get to, and then after that, I don't think IQ matters. In fact, I was talking to Elizabeth on the plane today. We flew down from Chicago, and Elizabeth was asking, what were you like in school? I said, I don't really want to answer that question. And I said, I was like a B student. I'm being honest now. I failed English in year 10. I was a B student. I was good at some subjects, terrible at others. The university that I went to in Australia, I didn't even get in on the first round. I had to get in on everyone else who we wanted didn't want us, so yeah, you can come. I'm the world's worst speller. Everyone goes, oh no, you're not really. I'm like, when I was in school, the teacher didn't even have me stand up for the spelling bee. Oh. She would say, Greg, just sit down, don't worry about it, because you'll be sitting there first one down. So I can't spell, but hey, I got to run a $50 billion company. So as parents, we're like preoccupied. I know a lot of you are too young to be parents, but as parents, we get preoccupied about our children's results. I think it's the thing that matters least. There's two other parts to SMART. There's your emotional intelligence, which I think is really important. And the interesting thing about it, and again, we got doctors everywhere. We've got Elizabeth, we got you. I am told, and the two of you can correct me, your IQ is sort of your IQ. It doesn't matter how much you read. You can't make yourself much smarter no matter what you read. So sort of God gave you an IQ. Emotional intelligence, which is your ability to interact with the world and humans and people, you can actually get much better at it. You can learn to be better at it. Then there's this new thing called cultural intelligence, CQ. Have you heard about it? No, it's an evolving thing. And CQ, or I just made it up, one of the two. Anyway, cultural intelligence is the ability to move within cultural norms and values and be a successful leader. And if you think about this country, there's probably 50% of people think one thing and 50% think another. It was originally about, like, if you're in Russia today and you go to Dubai tomorrow, can you make that cultural assimilation? But I think it's actually about cultural, even within a country, because of the sort of cultural norms and values and different. Anyway, so SMART is IQ, EQ, CQ. Heart is really simple. It's about two things. Do you actually have a heart? Do you genuinely care about people? Do you have a heart for people? And the second one is, do you genuinely care about the job you've got? Like, do you actually love the job you've got? And if you can check both of those, then there's heart. The third one is courage, which I think a lot of people are smart. Like, everyone in this room's smart. Most people have a good heart. The question, I think the thing, and it's my answer to what distinguishes great leaders, is do you have courage? And you can't be courageous in the absence of fear. Mm-hmm. So if you know the outcome, or with 99% certainty, do not pretend you're being courageous. There actually has to be an element of fear in whatever decision you're making, or whatever you're going to do, that enables you to be courageous. And the great thing about courage, if you think about fear, there's an acronym for fear, which Mara and Stephen Clements used to teach me, which was, fear stands for false expectations appearing real. So the things we're mostly fearful of actually never happen. Yet, it stops us from making decisions. And the worst thing you can do as a leader is not make a decision. And one of my wisdoms is, you won't always be right, but you always have to be clear. And so I see a lot of great smarts, I see a lot of great hearts. I think the thing that distinguishes the truly great leaders is, will you be courageous? So I'll give you a couple of examples, and they're not mine. So we ran out of chicken a few years ago in the UK. That's not really good when you're a chicken company and you don't have any chicken, okay? I just be honest, that's not good. And so the UK team, by the way, led by Paula McKenzie, brilliant woman, Meg Farron was the CMO, they came up with an idea, which is to run an advertising that's headline was FCK. Sorry, we've run out of chicken. Well, we all know what FCK really stands for. I'm not going to say it because I'll get in trouble.
Thank you.
And it was pretty courageous to run an ad that basically said, you know, we've screwed up and we don't have any chicken. And I didn't realize how courageous it was and how the culture of Yum gave them the courage to make that decision until I know Randall Stevenson at the time was running AT&T. Like, how big is AT&T? And Randall said to me, oh, I saw the FCK ad that you guys ran in the UK. I said, yeah, I'm really proud of the team that we had the courage to run that piece of advertising. He said, I took that ad to my executive team and I asked them, would we have the courage to run it? And they all said no. And that made me feel so good that, not that he wouldn't run it, but that we had a culture where two amazing women who led this amazing brand in the UK had the courage to run an ad that in a lot of other companies would get you fired or sacked or demoted or in trouble or whatever. Now, would I run that ad in the US? No, I would not, because it would be culturally insensitive. But in the UK, we did run it, and we ran it successful, and the recovery from running out of chicken was probably one of the greatest. We won so many awards for that piece of work. And so, but you're only courageous if the culture enables or encourages you to be courageous. Otherwise, you're going to go, well, I'm not going to do that because I'll lose my job, right? If the downside is greater than the upside, and that's all about culture. So anyway, that is smart, heart, and courage. Least important thing, your IQ.
Well, and they all have it in here, I can tell you that.
Oh, I'm sure they do.
So I'm going to ask you one more question,
Yeah.
then I want the audience. I know a couple
sure.
of my students asked if they could
Sure.
ask questions.
Yeah.
So let's talk about courage. Talk about that fourth meal at Taco Bell on the marketing side.
Yeah, so we're having this big discussion. Should we do breakfast or should we do late night? That was sort of the premise of the conversation. I was the chief marketing officer at the time. And I thought, you know, breakfast is like McDonald's owns breakfast. It's going to be really difficult. And yet, you know, everyone tended to talk about Taco Bell as well. On my way home from somewhere, I often stop at Taco Bell. We won't mention why they went to Taco Bell. And so I thought, well, I think there's more upside by... Now, eventually, I thought we'd get to breakfast, which we eventually did. But I thought the priority should be late night before breakfast. But one of the other things, and by the way, fourth meal was not mine, it's Jeff Fox. Jeff Fox was the guy who came up with the idea. So I said to Jeff, but everyone else is doing late night, I mean, using the term late night. So we're just going to be another brand doing late night, and give Jeff credit. He came back and said, we should call it fourth meal, because everyone thinks of breakfast, lunch, and dinner as the 3 meals. And so it was brilliant, because what we also did is we didn't force the franchisees to stay open till a guaranteed time. A guy called Bob Fulmer, Bob worked out that if we did $38 in the last half hour, we should stay open another half hour. So we weren't ordering the franchisees. We were like, hey, calculate what you do in the last half hour. If you keep doing $38, just stay open. And Jeff Fox came up with the idea of fourth meal, and I think what it did is it made it incredibly distinctive, because it became part of the vernacular, which is people would say, hey, you know, we're going to go off the fourth meal. They didn't even say, are we going to go to Taco Bell? They would say, you know, are we going to go and have some fourth meal? So I think there are lots of those examples, but I think they go back to culture, which is, you know, is fourth meal, the safe answer is we'll just do late night. Because, you know, I can't get into trouble. I mean, if I said to David Novak, oh, we're just going to do late night, he'd go, yeah, that's good, great, yeah, fantastic. So I'm not going to get into trouble, but that's like boring and doesn't make me distinctive. So the idea of doing doing fourth meal, which no one had ever done, I'll tell you my biggest David Novak, like, oh my God, he was not happy with me story, was we had come up with the idea of think outside the bun. And think outside, David loved it. He thought that was the greatest, you know, tagline ever invented. And so I had to go to him one day because Ken Mensch, who wrote the book with me, Ken had come into me and said, food is no longer fuel, it's an experience. That's all he said to me. And I went, oh my God, think outside the bun is now the wrong tagline, because think outside the bun is a tagline for food as fuel. It's not a tagline for food as experience. So, you know, we got our little presentation together. We fly to Louisville, and we go to David, food's gone from fuel to experience, and we're going to walk away from think outside the bun, and we're going to go to live must. He goes, you guys flying back commercially, that's such a stupid idea, right? And I was like, because he's like, I think outside the bun is the greatest tagline, ever invented. Now, to give David credit, we said, look, it is a great it was a great tagline, and we leveraged that incredibly. But I said, just stop. The reason we're changing the tagline is not because we woke up and we don't like the tagline. There's this massive cultural shift going on that food had moved from simply fuel to an experience, and we needed a tagline that, and to be fair to David, he did joke and he bought into it. And that also took courage, right? Because, I know the CEO of the company thinks the tagline we got is the greatest tagline. I'm going to turn up and tell him that we're going to change it. But I think that's, again, Live Must was a sort of whole team effort. It wasn't it's not mine, it was just a team. In fact, the funny thing was, it was going to be Live a Little Must, okay? And Paquito Must, so like Live a Little Must. And then there was, someone came in and said, yeah, I don't see how we're going to fit that on the front of a cap. And I thought, yeah, that's going to be quite a mouthful on the cap. And so someone said, why don't we just go with Live Must? And so we did.
It's a great tagline.
It's a great tagline. It's still the tagline today, I think. But that's just another story of, I think, A, using insights, and B, having the courage to even tell someone who thinks your other idea is your greatest idea, it really is time to move on. And that's what I always look for in executives, which is, and not just because they woke, because anyone who wakes up and says, I'm just going to change the tagline, I would tell them to fly back commercial, but this was driven out of insights that Ken had identified, and it was a game changer. And I think Taco Bell had 2 or 3 years where everyone else was still treating food as fuel. We were treating food as an experience. We were trying to build this lifestyle brand, and that really, if you look at the sales, that was when we really accelerated, because I think culturally we were in tune with what was going on in culture.
That's awesome. Great stories. Well, it's hard to believe we're running out of time. I feel like we could talk to Greg forever.
Yeah.
But I want to give you all a chance to ask questions. So I know one of my students wanted to ask a question. Miss Gabby, you want to grab the microphone? And I think we have time for a couple. Greg, if you're up to that.
Oh, I'm up for it.
And then I'll talk about the book piece.
Hi.
Hi.
I really enjoyed your presentation. It was really cool. I just wanted to ask, 2 questions. The first one is, how do you respond to criticism? I am someone that's very direct and honest, but when a little bit of backlash comes from that, I get very self-conscious, even when I know I did the right thing. And I'm sure you have experienced that with such a huge company.
Just occasionally people are criticizing.
Of course.
Not often, just occasionally. You want me to answer that one first? Because I'm old, I won't remember the first question if you ask me to.
Oh, okay.
It's interesting, I was talking to someone about this the other day, and there was this whole idea about people being offended. So I guess it's sort of similar. So here's my belief. You can only be offended if you believe the person's opinion or view is actually superior to your own opinion and view of yourself. And so, rightly or wrongly, hopefully not egotistically, if I think whatever someone has said about me, if I have a more positive view of myself about whatever was said, then I'm not offended, because I discount your opinion to be worth less than mine. So I think the way to think about this is think about what you think of yourself, whatever the subject matter happens to be, and if your view or opinion of yourself is superior to the view or opinion of someone who's trying to take you down, then just move on, because ultimately you're in charge of your view and opinion of yourself.
Okay, thank you.
That was good.
And then my second question is, you talk about transparency being one of your key factors in the way you lead. How do you keep being transparent in this day and age?
The key is vulnerability. And I have said this before, so I'll get in trouble, but Americans, you suck at being vulnerable. You are really, really bad. Like when I lived in Orange County in Taco Bell, I drive to work every day and every kid's child was a national honour student. And I used to think, well, where are the dumb kids? Because, you know, there is a bell curve, so they can't all be national honour students. There's got to be, do the dumb kids ride their bike to school or walk to school or something, right? So, and I think if you're vulnerable, I think being vulnerable is one of the most important characteristics of leadership. And so, here's an example. I shared with you, I suck at English and spelling, which I do. So if you've never met me and I turn up and you know, he's Greg Creed, he's the new CEO. If I got on stage and said, oh, look, I invented Think Outside the Barn and DLT and, you know, you're going to think, well, who's this egomaniac that's turned up, right? But if you get up on stage and you go, hi, I'm Greg, I really suck at spelling, I'm really bad, can I use, is that not the word I meant to use here? Oh, okay. I'm not good at process, but you know what? I'm okay at, you know, this, that, and the other. Then all of a sudden you go, okay, this guy's pretty, he's being honest, right? And so, and if you're also vulnerable, this is really important. If you're vulnerable, the most important person you have to be vulnerable to is yourself, right? Because if you're vulnerable to yourself, then you will surround yourself with people that are great at the stuff you're not good at, okay? And so, you know, I need process people around me. I need people who can organize me. I'm the most disorganized human being on the planet, right? However, I get a plane on time, I seem to get everywhere, I turn up here on time, because I have people who, you know, do that for me. And it's not because I'm lazy, I'm just not good at it. And so I think if you're vulnerable to yourself, is part A, then you will seek people who will make you better. Mm-hmm. And if part B, you're vulnerable externally, it makes you more real and genuine and approachable.
Thank you, Greg. It was great listening to your answer.
Thank you. Good job. Anyone else like to ask a question? Oh, yes, we have one in front, and then we'll go to the middle.
No, the lady's bringing the microphone down for you.
Yes.
So my name is Nyla. Basically, I just wanted to see how you encourage your employees to think outside of the box, to reprogram their mindset so that they can basically think on a higher level.
Sure. Well, I think the answer is culture, right? Which is, and I know that sounds like a very simple answer. It's definitely not telling everyone to be more creative. Now, the other interesting thing about creativity, which I always go off a tangent, so, you know, here we go again, is everyone thinks that they have to be either creative or they have to do the breakthrough thinking or they have to do whatever. Sometimes it's actually recognizing someone else's creativity and then championing that in the organization. So I'm going to give you another example. We've got time? I'm going to give another example.
We have a couple minutes.
So we were trying to make Taco Bell, the work we were doing was to make the classic taste of Taco Bell more portable. That was sort of what we were fundamentally trying to do, make the classic taste more portable. And I'm sitting in my office, I'm the chief marketing officer, and one day a lady called Lois Carson phones me up and says, I've got this idea I'd like to show you. And so I go down and she shows me what is today a crunch wrap, right? And I look at it and I go, oh my, how good is this? Like classic taste made portable. And so I said to her, you know, wow, hey Lois, when did you have this idea? Thinking, driving to work this morning, in the shower this morning, I don't know, you know. And she goes, oh no, you're the 5th CMO I've showed it to. And I'm like, well, how stupid are they and how lucky am I? Because now I'm the inventor of the, no, I'm just joking. And so it wasn't, I didn't invent Crunchwrap, and I honestly, even in the book, Lois Carson gets credit for inventing Crunchwrap. I think what I did was champion Crunchwrap rather than the 4 previous CMOs who had sort of thought it wasn't such a great idea. So don't think that when people say you need to be creative, it doesn't mean you actually have the idea. Sometimes it just means you've got to be the champion of someone else's idea. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Wonderful. Well, why don't we take one more? We have two folks right here in the middle. We'll take one more, and then Greg will be here. And while you're getting that, I will tell you we'd like students to have books, so when you're finished, come down here. And if we run out, we're going to order more, and Greg will sign a little slip that we'll stick in them.
Mm-hmm.
So, wanted to tell you
Okay.
that.
Hello, nice to meet you, sir. My question is, what is your process for bouncing back from failure?
Oh, that's a great question. So the question was, what is my process for bouncing back from failure? Well, as a marketer, you have lots of failure. I just got to be honest, right? It is, and as a CEO, you have failures too. I mean, in any job, there is failure. I think I think you got to have internal grit, right? And in the sense of, well, go back to the point I made earlier. The worst thing you can do is not make a decision, right? So I never jumped on someone if they didn't make a decision, if they made a wrong decision, but I got not very happy if we didn't make a decision. And here's the thing I used to hate most. You know when you're in a meeting, or maybe you're too young, you're not working yet, but people go, oh, you know what, we're going to defer it. We're going to make that decision next week, right? And I would go, so we just decided not to make a decision. Oh, no. We're going to make the decision next week. No, you made a decision not to make a decision, right? And I would go, close the door, and you're not leaving until someone makes a decision. Now, it may not be the right decision, but an organization cannot handle a lack of clarity. And so in a weird way, it's better to actually be working in what may prove to be the wrong direction, because at least the entire organization is going there. If you don't make a decision, everyone in this room is going to make a different decision, and we're going to have chaos, right? So I think I always believe that if I made the best decision I could make with the information I had available, and it turned out to not be the case, then I just had a learning experience. And I think Tom Brady, who I'm not a big fan of because, he's a Patriot now, Buccaneer. Anyway, Tom Brady said, a setback is just a setup for a comeback. And I honestly have always looked at the mistakes I've made, and I made a lot, as learning something. And it's really funny. I made a big mistake back when I was at Unilever, I don't know how many years ago. And 30 years later, when we launched the Doritos Locos Taco, I used that learning experience not to repeat the same mistake. And I thought, you know what? It took me 30 years to use the mistake that I made, but it helped me not make the same mistake the second time. Does that answer your question? Perfect.
That was awesome. Well, Greg, thank you so much
My
for
pleasure.
being here with us. Such a